Hi, welcome back to part two, or the beginning of part two for my cloud series that I have. This one is going to be a bit more intensive, a bit more intricate, a bit more of a deep dive into different things as far as the cloud, right? So we're going to get into public and private cloud environments, of course, utilize the different subscriptions and infrastructures, as well as skills in administrating, maintaining, and managing different cloud resources, right? So we're going to cover a lot of different concepts in all areas as much as possible of cloud computing, security, business requirements, automation, and a few other things. But nonetheless, this video is going to focus on starting with this part two before we get into our latest series um, with solely with the focus on particular CSPs, which I'll actually talk about in just a moment. It's going to be AWS and Azure. Now, in simplest terms, I'm going to do today, or at least in this video, exploring cloud deployment models. And let's explain exactly, or I'm going to explain exactly what a cloud is, right? So it's just a vast network of devices used to pull resources together for free by end users, right? So for many different applications, usually such as like general file storage to host thousands of servers, right? So due to the attractions of cloud environments, right? Many companies exist that provide these services. The most popularly known are AWS and Microsoft Azure. AWS, Amazon Web Service, and Microsoft Azure, which is actually owned by Amazon and Microsoft, ironically. But nonetheless, we're going to get into some VPCs, virtual private clouds, not in this video, but just overall community cloud software as a service, things of that nature. Now, what I'm going to start off with is navigating the Microsoft Azure portal, which is a web interface used to create and manage Azure cloud resources, which is an example of a public cloud infrastructure. Now, going to pretty much just a general exploration of it as far as what it looks like, what it shows us, right, just to get a better overall understanding of how to create and maintain cloud infrastructure resources. So now, when I opened up this, I didn't click on any particular application besides Edge as far as my browser, right? Now it redirected me, so that's how I have it set up, to the Azure portal and signed in automatically. But in a real world scenario, either subscription will need to be purchased or will already exist as part of the existing company infrastructure if you're logging in from within the confines of your enterprise. So I'm going to actually head to the dashboard. And what it does is it just gives me or gives anyone an overview of all the resources and services that have been created for the subscription. Now, the dashboard can be customized. You can see create resources here according to a user's needs by adding shortcuts to resources that might be used more often than others. And as a subscription, my subscription contains no resources at the moment. The dashboard is, of course, empty. And in a real world scenario, I'll see multiple resources for multiple resource groups depending on your role and internal permissions. So let's take a look at a few other things. Again, this is just going to be a flyby for the most part. So if we take a look at all the services, right, it's just a general heading. Azure. It's going to list, popular tools like resource groups, marketplace, service health, and things of that nature, right? As far as the, let's see, as far as the general version of everything here. Now let's take a look at computing, what that section looks like. So pretty much it's various options for creating computer resources in the Azure infrastructure. And these resources are classified, as you can see at the top here, as infrastructure as a service, right? Which I'll actually go into a bit more in a future video. Now we take a look at networking, right? Now this is just different virtual scroll up here. Different networking components that are listed, and these components connect virtual devices to facilitate communication between these devices. Now we take a look at storage, right? It's just various components, storage components of the Azure platform, right? That are just that it shows us, and these storage components include creating storage for virtual machines or creating storage that will be accessible in the cloud. Now, just gonna take a look at one or two more. Now, for databases, right, just various options to create an infrastructure database, right? And these can be classified as a platform as a service, right? When databases are created, there's no need for like a server infrastructure. This will be maintained by Microsoft. And which is actually ironically, I'm going to mention that in another video as far as shared responsibility between the cloud service provider and the actual customer themselves. Now, lastly, I'm going to take a look at web and mobile, and these are the available web applications, right, such as um, mobile services that can be created on the Azure portal, right? And a company would actually create a web application hosted on Azure instead of acquiring and maintaining the physical structure or infrastructure to host web servers. And Microsoft manages and maintains these servers in the backend without any customer intervention. All right. So now that we've gotten that out the way, as far as taking a look at the inner workings of the infrastructure as the services as far as Azure is concerned, right? What I'm going to do here now, very fairly briefly, is exploring a private cloud. So outside of utilizing a public cloud subscription, right, organization can also investigate ways to develop a private cloud infrastructure depending on their needs as a business. Of course, for example, a company that provides a web service or applications to its user base may not wish to relinquish all trust to a third party, which I would definitely agree with that. Now, especially around security and uptime areas, therefore, it may pursue a private infrastructure instead. And it entirely depends on their needs as a business, naturally, right? Now, instead of purchasing a subscription, organization could actually invest in physical hardware, typically like multiple servers inside of a data center, to use as a platform for creating resources used by their employees or the end user base. So what I'm going to do is actually investigate and create a simple private cloud infrastructure using Hyper-V Manager here on the Windows. So now using this readily because it's readily available and it's the typical OS used in data centers, right? And then private cloud can actually be created using virtualization software like this, right? And actually, these type of machines are actually known as virtual machines. So let's actually go ahead and explore creating a simple private cloud infrastructure, right? So I'm actually going to do, let's see, I'm going to do new here, the new virtual machines. I mentioned is a virtual machine, right? And virtualization software, right, such as like Hyper-V, also allows users to easily create and spin up like virtual machines in general, which can be used in multiple different ways. Now, picture this, right? Instead of connecting to a server inside of a typical office environment, you have to instead remotely connect to a server inside of a data center that different people inside of your organization has access to or can access. Now, therefore, any device created here can be used for multiple applications, making this a private cloud infrastructure, again, within confines of, what you guys are doing, or your enterprise, rather, what you guys are doing. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and get started. Actually going to name this just to keep things as simple as possible. T-Lab Win 101, right? Then we're going to hit next. Now, in a real world scenario, I may name the device according to an existing name structure for the cloud or something defining is used like, let's say, DevOps, right, or software testing, just as an example, right? So I named it already, and for the generation right now in a real world environment, I would instead choose a generation that best fits the requirements of the device that I wish to create. Now, generation one for me, again, because this is all example based or and just showcasing, I'm just going to leave it at its default. All right. Now I'm going to leave it at the default here. Now this just allows me to assign the amount of virtual random access memory VRAM to the device. Now the virtual memory, right, is allocated from the host device and might impact its performance if too much memory is provisioned to the guest device. Now the connection, definitely want to do the virtual switch, right? And for this one, now in a real world scenario, I would choose whatever is most appropriate, right, for whatever type of resource I'm creating for the cloud again, right? So I'm just going to leave this at the default, all right? And I'm actually going to install from an OS from a bootable here, and I'm actually going to use the image file. I already have one. um, for this lab. Actually, open this up. All right, perfect. All right, so we're officially good to go here. I'm just going to hit next, and pretty much everything is done. So let's finish. So this is going to officially create the virtual machine, right? So now we're back on the pane, right? And it appears here. So I'm just going to right click here and officially connect. It should be, I'm actually going to maximize this window. Come on. Come on, window. Oh, it starts, but it doesn't maximize the window. Okay. So Windows is now beginning looks like the installation process. All right. To get a window set up in just a moment. Okay. Not sure if it's my connectivity, but like it's taking quite a while. All right, so now we have the window set up appearing. So I'm just going to leave everything as a default. And of course, I'm going to install now. All right. Actually, I'm just going to close it out because I don't really have to do this now. But this is just an example of how I would create a single virtual machine using a standard OS, right? And depending again on the organization needs, however, I could instead build a variety of different machines here for different purposes, forming a private cloud, right? So, but nonetheless, that brings us to the end of our video, for at least the first video for this series for the cloud, for general cloud things, and going over particularly in this video, deployment models, right? We did a few things just for a brief recap. We explored cloud service provider, in this case, Azure. Just a brief overview, really general overview, as general as you can get, really, and explored a private cloud of how to create the infrastructure for one, right? So again, thank you for watching. If you made it to the end, I'll see you on the next video when we actually go over different cloud service models. I'll see you there. In the meantime, stay curious, stay secure.